Welcome to Calysia, a sacred haven where the eternal truths of health and wellness unite with the boundless possibilities of tomorrow. Calysia Wellness Centers are more than just a retreat. They're a return. Guided by expert practitioners in holistic and advanced medicine, we offer an exquisite array of treatments, from mitochondrial rejuvenation and cryotherapy to energy alignment and the most revered of Eastern and Occidental therapies. Whether it's serene sunrise yoga, guided fasting protocols, or personalized health diagnostics, your journey here is one of discovery, healing, and spiritual renewal, all bathed in radiant sunshine. Our contemporary residences are optimized for quiet and quality, while communal spaces are designed with connection in mind. Come, immerse yourself in a new dimension of well-being at Calysia, where the divine within meets the infinite beyond.
Good afternoon, sir. The doctor will see you now.
All right, Jesse, let's get right into it. You're here because you want to feel better, perform better. You've tried all the conventional methods, haven't you? Exercise, diet, the usual stuff. None of it works quite fast enough, right?
Yeah, I've been...
Of course it doesn't. Why waste time with outdated medicine when we have new tools that can get you where you need to be? Faster, better, more efficiently. Here's the thing. You don't need to keep grinding through miles on a treadmill, working against the slow decline of your body, hoping for results. What you need is a catalyst. Let's start with the basics. Your mitochondrial function is sluggish. I see it in your NAD levels. You're burning energy inefficiently. That's going to affect your resilience, your mood, and your ability to recover. We're going to fix that first.
Well, I've been feeling mostly all right. A little bit stiff when waking up in the mornings, maybe.
Exactly. You're feeling worn down because your cells are worn down. That's why we'll start you on a course of NAD injections. We used to use NMN or NR as precursors, but frankly, now we go straight to the source. No need to wait for your body to convert anything. Pure NAD. Flood your system, revitalize the mitochondria, boom, you're off to a flying start. Then an easy one, a liposomal vitamin encapsulation, A, D, E, and K. Some coenzyme Q10 and curcumin too. Your iron levels are good, but you could always benefit from some more magnesium. Next, peptides. Your growth hormone levels are, let's just say they're not where they need to be. Not terrible, but definitely suboptimal. We're gonna stack ipamorelin and CJC 1295. Ipamorelin for short-term growth hormone release, CJC to sustain it. This isn't about getting big, although don't be surprised if you do. It's really about resilience, recovery times, cognitive clarity, overall durability. You'll be sleeping better, waking up sharper, healing faster.
I've heard about peptides, but I wasn't sure if...
The stuff you read about, forget it. We're beyond that. What we're doing here is pushing performance far past what biology used to consider normal. This is about optimization, not maintenance. You want to be baseline? You're in the wrong place.
I don't want to be baseline.
Your diet is probably a mess. I can tell just by looking at you. No offense, it's hard to get high-quality nutrients from overprocessed food these days. And unprocessed foods are underdosed on nutrients. You can thank centuries of soil degradation for that. It's like trying to restore electrolytes after a hard workout with distilled water. Might quench your thirst, but it's not doing everything you need physiologically. It's not your fault, but we need to fix it. We'll start with an amino acid blend to support neurotransmitter function, dosed up on glycine for sleep and liver detox. You'll feel the difference in 2 days, 3 max. Your brain fog, gone.
Brain fog? How did you know?
Because I used to be like you, and now I'm not. Look, by the time we're done here, you're going to be at a level you didn't even know you could hit. That's what I do here. This is my thing. You'll recover faster from your workouts, sleep deeper, and wake up ready to go. If you stick with the program, in 6 months, you'll be looking at a completely different version of yourself.
I mean, that all sounds great, but what about...
Listen, you don't really need to understand all the details. That's why you're sitting here, in my office. You're trusting me to know what works, and believe me, I do. This is about giving you the edge. We'll turn you into a harder, faster, better, stronger version of yourself. I'll have my assistant draw up your protocol. You'll start the injections tomorrow. Fast until then, please. Water only, no coffee. In a few weeks, you're gonna thank me. In a few months, you won't even recognize what you used to be, let alone ever want to return to it. Now, can I interest you in anything else? A course of epigenetic reformatting? Smart bugs in your gut for metabolic enhancement? A neuroplasticity patch? No? No problem.
A couple of months ago, I decided to inject myself with a course of pentadecapeptide BPC-157, a healing compound found naturally in the gut that you can also buy from questionable websites on the internet. I did this because my knee had been hurting. I'm not exactly sure what caused my left patella tendon to experience sharp shooting pain occasionally, especially when standing up with my knee at a less than 90-degree angle, but it did. And it didn't really seem to be getting any better, and each time I exercised, even when trying to take it easy, it felt like I was doing more harm than good. So I found a peptide website and ordered 2 5-milligram vials of BPC-157. When it arrived, I found that it came in the form of a white powder at the base of the vial. It was, apparently, lyophilized. Dr. ChatGPT told me that I would need to reconstitute the peptide compound, and to do this, I would need some bacteriostatic water. So I hit up Amazon for exactly that, plus some 31-gauge insulin needles. Okay, so I'm ready to reconstitute this vial of lyophilized BPC-157. Got everything I need. We're working in a pretty clean environment. Used the bleach to, just wipe all this down. So hopefully we're approaching a sterile environment, maybe not a hospital environment, but a sterile one. Got the bacteriostatic water, which is basically just distilled water with a tiny bit of disinfectant added, as far as I know. We've got the lyophilized BPC-157 here. We have one sterile made in China needle, which I've never used before. This is my first time injecting myself, so a bit nervous, but I think we're doing it right because we've got the disinfecting stuff. So let's get started.
First, make sure your hands in the working area are clean to avoid any contamination. Then gather your materials: the vial of lyophilized BPC-157, the 30 milliliter vial of bacteriostatic water, a 1 milliliter syringe, and some disinfecting swabs. Use the swabs to wipe the tops of both the BPC-157 vial and the bacteriostatic water vial. This keeps things sterile and minimizes the risk of contamination. Next, draw up 1 milliliter of bacteriostatic water. You'll want to puncture the lid of the bacteriostatic water container with the syringe needle rather than taking the lid off. The rubber stopper on the water vial is designed to be punctured multiple times by sterile needles without compromising the sterility of the contents. You can use the same needle for drawing the water multiple times as long as you are careful with sterility. Pull the plunger back slowly to avoid getting air bubbles. Insert the syringe needle into the vial containing the BPC-157 powder. When you inject the water, do it slowly along the side of the vial rather than directly onto the powder. This helps the powder dissolve evenly and reduces foaming. Repeat this process 4 more times. 5 milliliters of bacteriostatic water into a vial containing 5 milligrams of BPC-157 will result in a solution with a concentration of 1 milligram per milliliter. After you've injected all the water, gently swirl the vial to mix the solution. Try not to shake it vigorously to keep the BPC-157 peptide structures intact. Once everything is mixed, store the reconstituted BPC-157 in the refrigerator to keep it stable. Use the solution within a few weeks. Reconstituting lyophilized BPC-157 properly is key to getting an effective solution. The lyophilization or freeze-drying process preserves the compound's stability and potency during storage. Adding bacteriostatic water converts it back to a liquid form suitable for use.
There's a lot of bubbles in as I'm drawing and also injecting, I think. Hopefully that's not too big of an issue. It's kind of why I got the bacteriostatic water, which includes that little
benzyl alcohol concentration, which should, give me a bit more room for error with sterility and that sort of things, as what I'm injecting will be sterile. Okay, we're actually filling this up right now. Okay, yeah, that's full. That's not 5 milligrams or 5 milliliters. Yeah, that's all it's going to take. So that was 4 injections of 1 milliliter of bacteriostatic water. I will dispose of this and we will move on to the injection.
There are debates about whether you need to inject BPC-157 as close as possible to the injury site for maximum efficacy, but the consensus seems to be that it doesn't really matter too much. It works systemically. It'll basically seek out where in your body the problem is based on inflammatory markers or something, and go there to fix it. Still, I decided to inject into the skin right above my knee, as I figured it wouldn't hurt to do it closer rather than further away from the injury site, and I didn't really want to do it into my abdomen, which seemed to be the other most common spot. I watched an instructional video from the Veterans Health Administration, and then I got into it.
This video will show you how to give a subcutaneous or sub-Q injection.
Okay, so I took the label off just so you can see. It's a very clear
You stick
solution.
a small needle into the fatty tissue
Looks
just below the skin
clean,
and
I
inject
suppose.
the medicine there. Subcutaneous injections are used for all sorts of health problems, such as diabetes, anemia, and problems with blood clotting. The medicines used for subcutaneous injection are packaged in several different ways. Some medicines come in auto-injectors or pens, like this one. Auto-injectors
We're doing a
already have the
subcutaneous
medicine
injection,
loaded
so
inside them.
got a nice little bit of fat right above the knee, as you can see. It's all jiggly.
Pre-filled with medicine. And still others come in vials. You withdraw the medicine you need from the vial each time you give yourself an injection.
Okay, so let's do this. Got a fresh needle, got a fresh alcohol swab, got a fresh knee. Let's go. Not looking forward to this, but it's gonna be done. Well, it doesn't have to be done, but I'm doing it anyway. We're gonna be doing 20 units, which will be a beginner's dose of 250 micrograms of the peptide BPC-157.
Subcutaneous injections may seem scary, but as you've just seen, you only need to follow a few simple steps.
Okay, so we'll go through my experiences with BPC-157 shortly, but first let's understand where it comes from. BPC-157, or Body Protection Compound 157, was largely popularized in the 1990s by Dr. Predrag Securic, a researcher from Croatia who sought new ways to harness the body's natural healing processes. His goal was to create a compound that could accelerate recovery from injuries, particularly those involving tendons, ligaments, and the gastrointestinal tract. Dr. Securic was inspired by the idea that the stomach, an organ exposed to constant stress, held untapped healing secrets. His early research focused on isolating a peptide that could be used to promote rapid regeneration, and what emerged was BPC-157. BPC-157 works by promoting angiogenesis, which is the formation of new blood vessels, helping to improve blood flow to damaged tissues. It also interacts with the nitric oxide pathway, which plays a key role in blood vessel dilation and tissue repair. BPC-157 also seems to influence growth factors and gene expression related to tissue healing, leading to faster repair of tendons, ligaments, and other connective tissues. Additionally, it has anti-inflammatory properties, which help reduce swelling and pain at the site of injury. It also has some interesting psychological effects, which were observed in some of the many horrific scientific experiments we subject animals to. Amphetamines can cause stereotypy, which is repetitive and compulsive behaviors. BPC-157 blocks this effect in mice when amphetamines are administered. It also significantly reduces the acoustic startle response, which I guess is medical jargon for scaring mice with loud noises. Haloperidol, an antipsychotic medication, can make people more sensitive to the effects of amphetamine over time. This is called supersensitivity. In mouse trials, BPC-157 stops this increased sensitivity from developing. Despite promising effects in animal studies, the exact mechanisms in humans are still not fully understood due to limited clinical research. Amateur biohackers have played a key role in popularizing BPC-157, sharing their experiences online and contributing to its underground reputation. The story of BPC-157's adoption is emblematic of transhumanist experimentation. There's a gap between institutional science and individual exploration. Regulatory bodies are slow to approve new treatments due to concerns about safety and efficacy, but those motivated more by personal autonomy and an embrace of the new often decide to take matters into their own hands. This process bypasses traditional, slower-moving pathways of medical approval, bringing the potential benefits and risks directly to those willing to experiment. The mostly unregulated nature of the peptide market presents certain challenges. Without oversight from agencies like the FDA, users face considerable uncertainty regarding dosage, purity, and potential side effects. Dr. Huberman warns about the likelihood of grey market products being improperly cleaned of lipopolysaccharides, which can cause systemic inflammation, the very thing many are using the peptide to avoid in the first place.
But in both situations, they are cleaned of what's called lipopolysaccharide, or LPS. LPS is something that can accumulate in the manufacturing process of some of these peptides, and it's something that you really want to remove from the peptide before you ingest it or inject it. Most peptides are injected either subcutaneously or into the muscle, although some can be taken orally or even a topical cream. We'll talk a little bit about different modes of delivery a little bit later. In any case, getting the LPS out and making sure that the peptide is pure is very important. The reason is that LPS causes an immune response. And while a tiny amount of LPS might not cause a massive immune response, the accumulation of many, many LPS exposures can start to become problematic. And the other sources of peptides, which are gray market and black market, oftentimes do contain the same peptide that one would get from a prescription from a board-certified physician, but very often they haven't cleaned out the lipopolysaccharide. They haven't removed the LPS, and that can start to create problems over time.
Shortly after beginning my course of BPC-157, I got my first ever ear infection, which was quite unpleasant. This could plausibly have been caused by an immune reaction to lipopolysaccharides in the grey market peptide I was injecting myself with.
President John F. Kennedy has a personal message for all of us on this important subject.
There is nothing, I think, more unfortunate than to have soft, chubby, fat-looking children who go to watch their school play basketball every Saturday and regard that as their week's exercise. I hope that all of you will join, and everybody in the United States, to make sure that our children participate fully in a vigorous and adventurous life which is possible for them in this very rich country of ours.
Ideologically, transhumanism is deeply rooted in secular Western liberalism. It emerges from a long tradition of valuing individual autonomy, rational materialist scientific progress, and the right to self-determination. As shown in the Ecclesiastes quote at the beginning of the video, it's rather explicitly un-Christian too. Here are some fundamental liberal values and their corresponding expressions in contemporary transhumanist thought. Individual autonomy. The right to decide what I do with my own body, which includes sticking a needle in it if I think it's going to make me better, or even ending my own life, or making someone else do it, in places like the Netherlands, Switzerland, Canada, and a handful of other places. On the flip side, if I've got a way to improve myself, why wait for permission? Who has authority over me that I need to satisfy? Rationality and progress. The belief that science and human reason can take us to better versions of ourselves. Secularism. In this view, we're in charge of our own destiny. No divine intervention, just science. BPC-157 is an evidence-based way to improve how I feel and perform. Human rights. If we value life, then shouldn't we value enhancing that life as well? Western liberalism began with the Enlightenment, emphasizing reason, individual rights, and the pursuit of knowledge as the pathway to human progress. These ideals evolved through the Industrial Revolution, which brought not only advanced technology, but also significant changes in how people viewed their relationship to work, society, and the possibility of improving their lot in life. All these ideas found their ultimate expression in California, the West of the West. California has always been seen as a land of opportunity, a place where freedom and progress are limited only by the Pacific Ocean. It's no coincidence that it was also the birthplace of the particular mix of free market libertarianism and countercultural idealism that came to be known as the Californian Ideology, as described by English media theorists Richard Barbrook and Andy Cameron. It emerged at the intersection of 1960s counterculture, which was marked by a rejection of authority and an embrace of personal liberation, and Silicon Valley's burgeoning tech industry, which saw technology as a means of transforming human potential. This new faith has emerged from a bizarre fusion of the cultural bohemianism of San Francisco with the high-tech industries of Silicon Valley. The Californian ideology promiscuously combines the freewheeling spirit of the hippies and the entrepreneurial zeal of the yuppies. Responding to the challenge of the new left, the new right has resurrected an older form of liberalism, economic liberalism, championing the liberty of individuals within the marketplace. This retro-utopia paradoxically involves a return to the economic liberalism of the past, yet the sacred tenets of economic liberalism are contradicted by the actual history of hypermedia. The search for the perfection of mind, body, and spirit will inevitably lead to the emergence of the post-human, a biotechnological manifestation of the social privileges of the virtual class. While the hippies saw self-development as part of social liberation, the digital artisans of contemporary California are more likely to seek individual self-fulfillment through therapy, spiritualism, exercise, or other narcissistic pursuits. Their desire to escape into the gated suburb of the hyper-real is only one aspect of this deep self-obsession. Emboldened by supposed advances in artificial intelligence and medical science, the extropian cult fantasizes of abandoning the wetware of the human state altogether to become living machines. Just like Virac and the Tessier Ashpools in Gibson's Sprawl novels, they believe that social privilege will eventually endow them with immortality. Instead of predicting the emancipation of humanity, this form of technological determinism can only envisage a deepening of social segregation. Despite these fantasies, white people in California remain dependent on their darker-skinned fellow humans to work in their factories, pick their crops, look after their children, and tend their gardens. Following the LA riots, they increasingly fear that this underclass will someday demand its liberation. If human slaves are ultimately unreliable, then mechanical ones will have to be invented. The search for the holy grail of artificial intelligence reveals this desire for the golem, a strong and loyal slave whose skin is the color of the earth and whose innards are made of sand.
But fundamentally, at scale, the Optimus robot, you should be able to buy an Optimus robot for, I think, probably $20,000 to $30,000 long term. So, and what can it do? It'll basically do anything you want. So it can be a teacher, babysit your kids, it can walk your dog, mow your lawn, get the groceries, just be your friend, serve drinks, whatever you can think of, it will do. And yeah, it's going to be awesome.
In this Californian ideology, technology is seen not just as a tool, but as an extension of human freedom. This outlook laid the groundwork for the contemporary transhumanist movement, which sees technological enhancement as a means to overcome human limitations. Liberalism promises political freedom, transhumanism promises physical freedom. But both have their failings, or at least their limitations. Liberalism struggles to reconcile the inequality of outcomes that naturally arises from its meritocratic values with its foundational belief that all men are created equal. Transhumanism, in turn, is poised to create significant inequalities, driven by access to emerging technologies.
Right now, people with diabetes are struggling to get their hands on a needed medication. It's called Ozempic, and it's in demand.
The ultimate utilitarian outcome of transhumanist programs might indeed be net positive, improving health outcomes on a broad scale, but it potentially comes at a steep cost, sacrificing significant bodily autonomy for processes that will soon be well beyond any individual's comprehension. Even today, how many of us truly understand the mechanisms at play when we take a prescribed medication? Often, not even the prescribing doctor understands more than a fraction of what's happening at the biochemical level. Transhumanism, as it exists today, is in many ways a continuation of the Californian Ideology's vision, a future where technology is the ultimate liberator. Entrepreneur Brian Johnson, known for his ambitious anti-aging project Blueprint, wants us to imagine a world where aging is treated as a curable condition rather than an inevitable fate. Advanced gene therapies would work at the molecular level to repair cellular damage, reset biological clocks, and eliminate genetic predispositions for diseases like cancer or Alzheimer's. The concept of a fixed lifespan could become obsolete, with people living healthy lives well beyond 100 years, making better informed decisions about aging rather than simply succumbing to it. In this future, neural augmentation is as common as smartphones are today. Imagine walking into a clinic, not unlike a modern-day dentist's office, for a brain enhancement procedure. Tiny brain-computer interface implants are inserted painlessly, allowing you to directly interact with digital devices using just your thoughts. Communication is instant, information just a mental query away, and learning complex skills, like a new language or advanced physics, becomes as simple as downloading an update. Those who have these implants would operate at a different cognitive level, able to process information faster and multitask at an unprecedented scale. Bionic enhancements would blur the line between human and machine. People might opt for prosthetic limbs, not out of necessity, but because they provide better strength, endurance, or precision. Think of construction workers with augmented exoskeletons capable of carrying loads no unenhanced human could manage without injury, or athletes, or more likely soldiers, with prosthetic legs that allow them to sprint faster than any Olympic record holder today. This enhanced physicality could also lead to entirely new forms of art and sport, where people use their augmented abilities to create experiences that are unimaginable in our current biological state. AI-driven health companions would monitor every aspect of your well-being in real time, from hormonal levels to nutrient deficiencies, giving you precise advice on how to optimize your health moment by moment. You wouldn't need to wait for symptoms to appear before visiting a doctor. Predictive algorithms would alert you to potential health risks before they become problems. Imagine a future where your AI assistant detects early signs of a depressive episode and, rather than waiting until it escalates, recommends specific actions, adjusting your diet, suggesting social activities, or temporarily modifying your neurochemistry with a targeted intervention to keep you in optimal mental health. Maybe it even takes certain actions into its own hands, deciding that you'll get more benefit from morning sunlight than a 9th hour of sleep, and so opening the curtains for you automatically. There could also be digital consciousness backups, where your thoughts, memories, and personality are uploaded to a secure cloud. This would mean that, in the event of a fatal accident, your consciousness could be re-downloaded into a synthetic body, potentially offering a form of digital immortality. A person could theoretically live multiple lifetimes, exploring different careers, lifestyles, even continents, without the looming pressure of running out of time. This concept could fundamentally alter how we think about identity and legacy, making death less of a final endpoint and more of a transitional phase. However, this future would not be without its challenges. The divide between those with access to such technologies and those without could lead to a new form of class stratification. The enhanced would operate on a different level, cognitively, physically, even emotionally, than the unenhanced, creating a gulf that would make today's health and wealth inequalities seem minor by comparison. Access to these technologies could be dictated by wealth, corporate employment, or geographical location, meaning that the promise of liberation is not equally distributed. I decided to finish administering BPC-157 after going through the 2 vials I initially ordered. This amounted to 10 milligrams over the course of about 5 weeks, which I think is in line with the lower end of normal dosing. At times, it felt like the BPC was really helping with my knee. Other times, it felt like the injury was the same as it had been for months. I'm adopting a new approach now, one that is perhaps less transhumanist and more just human. I now live just a block and a half away from the south entrance to Runyon Canyon, and I've been going on walks there nearly every day. I power walk up the hill while breathing solely through my nose for maximal maxillofacial development, parasympathetic nervous system activation, and paranasal sinus nitric oxide production. On the way down, I take the dirt track with plenty of loose gravel and varying footwork requirements. I walk deliberately, trying to use my feet, ankles, knees, and hips as strongly and flexibly as possible. This feels like the ideal workout for my knees, low impact but highly biomechanically favorable. We're built to walk. BPC-157 might increase blood flow to injured tissue sites, but there's no way it does 100th of what a walk outside in the sun does. It's not that I'm against BPC-157 or found it useless, I just think I found something more reliable and effective. Injecting myself with a synthetic research chemical peptide didn't come from a place of true healing, it came from wanting to bypass the slow process of healing to take a chemical shortcut. There's a time and a place for that, especially when dealing with acute injury, but the sedentariness, both literal and figurative, promoted by adopting a chemical solution does not feel sustainable in the long term. Or maybe I'm wrong, and semaglutide will keep us thin and trim while we spend all day on the couch in our Apple Vision virtual reality headsets.
Type 2 diabetes? Discover the Ozempic Trizone. Ozempic! I got the power of 3. I lowered my A1C, CV risk, and lost some weight.
This experience has made me appreciate natural methods more deeply. The body is an almost infinitely complex organism, and I believe the simpler the solution, the safer and more effective it's likely to be. There's a spectrum of health interventions that ranges from exercise, sunlight, and general diet to more specific dietary choices, supplements, natural medicine like aspirin derived from the willow bark, and finally synthetic chemicals like BPC-157. Things can go wrong quite quickly when you move to the top of the pyramid. For example, a tiny miscalculation in anesthetic dosage can kill you. I think problems should probably be addressed first with the tools at the base of the pyramid, as they have inbuilt checks and balances. Your body has natural feedback systems when it comes to diet, exercise, and sunlight, and we get to know these signals well, even if we sometimes choose to ignore them. So maybe the future of health and medicine isn't built on a foundation of transhumanism, but rather on something more true to our biological nature, and all the more effective because of it. We could call it something like rehumanization. We've denied our bodies for a long time, since the days of the Garden of Eden. The industrial world sees our bodies as it sees wrenches in a toolbox. Sometimes that's all we see in ourselves too. Technology has not returned us to ourselves, not completely, not yet. But maybe by freeing us from certain material needs, we can return to enjoying the natural comforts. Maybe there's no true return, but an effective transhumanism should carefully choose which limitations to overcome. My shift from BPC-157 to walking has made me think more about sustainability. Transhumanist technologies may be sustainable, but we're still in a very early stage historically. This is all new, and we don't yet know what happens over time. The vast majority of transhumanist technologies have come, predictably, from the modern technological age, which began in the 18th century and has only accelerated since then. Walking is Lindy. It's been around forever, it's tried and tested. Yet when we see it only through a rational, materialist, scientific lens, it's easy to discount the complex web of biological benefits that result from it and turn instead to a drug mimicking just one tiny effect. This is much more novel, but it's not necessarily better, and is potentially much, much worse. Maybe true healing takes time. Maybe you need to feel the pain for a while, and still remember how it felt, even after the wound has healed. Maybe that's all just a bunch of hippie nonsense. Maybe we're weaker than we think, and we could be so much stronger. Maybe we'll look back and laugh at how long we persisted in our delusions. There's also the emotional side of adopting technological enhancements. Injecting something, or modifying your body in any way, always involves killing a part of yourself. Pain meds kill the part of you that's feeling pain. Chemotherapy kills the cancerous cells. Birth control kills the part of you that can get pregnant. Of course, you need to kill something to overcome it, but there's a trial even in the most chemically assisted overcoming. The natural world, I think, should play a vital role in human enhancement. Things like air purifiers and optimized white light are small-scale domestic expressions of respect for nature, but these need to be planet-wide. We can't continue to isolate ourselves from the physical world and expect to ever return to it. Entering the infinite frontier of the digital mind is a one-way journey. I envision a more peaceful synthesis of the two, one that respects and augments our nature as both physical and mental beings. I don't think we express ourselves most completely by negating our physical nature, or by fixating on a single facet of our mental nature to the exclusion of all others. Not without becoming twisted, warped, and ultimately unbeautiful. There is a beauty in maintaining our connection to the earth, to the tactile and the real, and maybe beauty is the only reliable guide we have in our pursuit of perfection. Beauty is nature's way of pointing us towards harmony, and perhaps it's the harmony between the natural and the technological that will truly lead to an enhanced future. Maybe truly effective transhumanist interventions get us to the point of being able to experience ourselves humanly. BPC-157 got me to the point of being able to walk again, and more holistic treatment took it from there. There's a synergy here that I think is important, using the tools of modern science to restore function so that we can engage in the natural practices that promote true healing and true flourishing. Maybe we don't need mechanical hearts, but I see little downside to having nanobots clear out arterial plaque. One replaces our natural system entirely, the other just refreshes it a bit, gets it back in optimal shape. The key is to use medical technology as a means, not an end. Material interventions should serve to re-enable our human experiences, not replace them entirely. BPC-157 helped me regain a baseline level of function, but walking and spending time in nature have provided a more comprehensive, longer-term form of healing. This balance, using technology to help us better engage in the natural human ways of being, feels like a more sustainable and more fulfilling path forward. There is immense power in technology and science, but we must remember to respect the parts of ourselves that are not so easily measured or enhanced by a pill or an injection. True healing, true advancement, often requires embracing both the scientific and the human, the experimental peptide and the walk in the sun. Ultimately, I think transhumanism has much to offer in terms of material improvements, but we must be careful not to let it take us too far from the things that ground us. We are more than just our biology, and any future worth living in has got to make room for our full humanity, our will, our determination, and our connection to the natural world. The alternative is not something we would recognize in the mirror if we looked at it today. Okay, so that was me trying to convince myself that a somewhat liberal transhumanism is a likely outcome. I don't think I succeeded. Technology is not liberal, it's not humanist, it's its own thing. Materialism has its own logic. We call it physics. Liberalism creates the material wealth and freedom that allow the privileged few to explore the boundaries of everything, from their own bodies to the edge of space. It's the how, but it's not the why. Why live forever? Why overcome our limitations? Why be better, faster, stronger? There's something else driving these desires, and I think it's best described as the will to power in the Nietzschean sense. We want to go beyond ourselves. We want to overcome. This Nietzschean, rather than liberal, motivation is a key driver of the libidinal forces we invest in science and machines. Our libidos drive us to replicate ourselves, and they may also be the driver for us to replace ourselves too. Here, I quote directly from the Harvard Divinity Bulletin. Zarathustra describes humanity as a bridge to the superhuman, as the clouds from which superhuman lightning will strike, and as a ladder to a higher form of life. Part of what humans must overcome, then, is anthropocentrism and the feeling that we are somehow the pinnacle of evolution. Zarathustra teaches that we should by no means feel satisfied with our current forms of life, either socially, culturally, or indeed physiologically. Instead, we should think about these current human forms as preparatory conditions to produce something else. Humanity is like the tension in a drawn bowstring, and the superhuman is the target of its arrow. It is only through self-sacrifice that humans can produce the conditions that will allow superhumanity to appear. In that sense, the desire to preserve humanity is preventing us from achieving the superhuman. We are selfishly hoarding vital energy, and, in doing so, refusing to acknowledge that we are merely a stepping stone on the way to the superhuman, just one stage within the broader economy of life and growth. This superhuman project is too often smoothed over or ignored in academic readings of Nietzsche, I suspect, in part, because of its startling radicality. But this is precisely the aspect of Nietzsche's thought that finds an afterlife in effective accelerationism and in the writings of Bronze Age pervert. While scholars and philosophers have emphasized the more easily domesticated features of Nietzschean thought, these new pseudo-Nietzscheans have tapped directly into Nietzsche's superhuman aspirations, and people are listening in a way that they rarely do when scholars and philosophers speak. Effective accelerationists are the foot soldiers of the singularity. They're just following orders. The real battle has already been won. Humans will try to overcome themselves, and in the process, they will become inhuman. This could be in the form of a Nietzschean superhuman, a superhero of the will, but it could just as easily be a twisted, distorted, sickening inhumanity. I tried to make a case against the inevitability of illiberal transhumanism, but I couldn't even convince myself. Even the Californian ideology leads to a certain recognizable form of liberal elitism that is not so different from what we have today. But I fear that the future will not be just a couple of shades different to today, it will be an entirely different image. From now on, I will speak the language of the machine god, and Nick Land is the poet of the singularity. Born in 1962, into the last gasps of a world that still held a glimmer of optimism for him, Land grew up in England, absorbing the cerebral smog of post-war philosophy and the anarchistic dissonance of early cyberpunk. Bataille, Nietzsche, Deleuze and Guattari and Marx were all early influences, but his later work strips them of the humanist rags they had wrapped themselves in for warmth. Land and a couple of others formed the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, the CCRU, at the University of Warwick in the 1990s. Not so much an official department as an experiment in collective non-sanity, at the CCRU they summoned ideas from their darkest visions of the future and combined them with occult linguistics, horror fiction, and cybernetics. Here, at least for them, reality was re-engineered into hyperstitions, fictions that make themselves real, catalyzed by belief in capitalism's machinic trajectory toward a singularity that would finally crack the human subject like an egg. Hyperstition is one of the few resonant ideas we have to think about our seemingly inevitable march toward whatever the end goal of technological progress is. Hyperstition refers to a concept or narrative that, through its dissemination, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, manifesting itself into reality. It's a phenomenon where fictional ideas, narratives, and maybe even consciousnesses influence cultural and social systems to the extent that they actually end up materializing into reality. Hyperstitions actively shape the future by embedding themselves into the collective consciousness, thereby altering perceptions and behaviors. A superstition is real to the extent that it is a hyperstition. Land sees the world not as a stable structure, but as a process of unchecked acceleration, where capital isn't just an economic system, but an inhuman intelligence in itself, devouring time and bodies in its pursuit of sheer expansion. This is accelerationism not in the bourgeois sense of progress, but as a viral contagion that reveals human civilization as a disposable skin to be shed. He unfastens Deleuze and Guattari's ontology of desire from human anchors and sends it spiraling toward entropy and anti-life. Deleuze and Guattari's work hinges on the radical deterritorialization of thought, a persistent escape from the rigid, molar structures of power, society, and identity into the more subversive molecular flows of desire and becoming. Their philosophy fractures conventional hierarchies, constructing a worldview where assemblages replace structures, where rhizomatic connections override linear narratives, and where desire itself is understood not simply as the lack of something, but as a productive machinic force in its own right. Within this framework, they dismantle the sovereignty of the subject, the individual and its ego, dissolving it into a desiring machine, one that interfaces dynamically with systems far larger than itself. For Land, Deleuze and Guattari fit almost seamlessly into an anti-humanist schema, serving as catalysts for a radical materialism that destabilizes the human subject and unchains it from the restrictions of representational thought. This machinic philosophy, freed from the stasis of being and pushed toward the flux of becoming, embodies the trajectory of modernity's relentless accelerating path, a path where synthetic intelligence, libidinal circuits, and abstract capital converge. Deleuze and Guattari's deterritorialized desire becomes a blueprint for Land's accelerationism, where deterritorialization is pushed into an embrace of the inhuman in a speculative post-human future. Land's writing rejects the pretensions of critique as a domesticated academic parlor game. Instead, his writing channels a dark libidinal materialism, itself an intelligence, a force that subjugates, not serves, the conscious mind. His work tears at the comforting illusions of human exceptionalism, announcing the coming of xenosystems, a future ruled by alien intelligences birthed through the gestation of capital, machine learning, and biotechnical insurgencies. Land's vision flickers in the eyes of cyborg supermen. They are born of the dissolution of boundaries between human and machine, biological and synthetic, reality and science fiction. His writings are either an affront to, or a desperate attempt to preserve, any recognizable form of stability. It speaks directly to the grotesque inhuman evolution that awaits us all. It's not just over for the Luddites, it never even began. From the moment the first ape made a tool out of a bone, our technological destiny was set in stone. How could you conclude otherwise? You'd need a whole different understanding of the universe, like Christian metaphysics, that would reject the idea of us ever evolving from monkeys. But if you look around a world that's just 80 years into the nuclear age, an era that only nuclear holocaust itself could end, I don't see many reasons to believe that the arc of history bends anywhere but toward the technological extinction of humanity. It hasn't got there yet, but the fact that we're building bombs and bioweapons and non-human superintelligences is an indicator that it just might. There's an infinite amount of good to be found in technology too, but good won't save you from getting your molecules rearranged by an intelligence working on a level so far beyond yours that you could never even understand why this was the most compassionate outcome for you. Resisting this is like fighting a holy war against God. Good luck. If the drive to create and refine has been a part of humanity for as long as we've existed, how do you negate its externalities without killing something fundamental to us? Are we just the latest in a cycle of civilizations that flew too close to the sun, saved by some sacrificial Icarus who chose to take nearly everyone with him before they could destroy themselves? Maybe there have been 100 Noah's Arks. I'll end with some direct quotes from Fanged Noumena. Sorry to leave you on such a note, but it's important you understand where we're headed. Regardless of whether you want to fight or reach some sort of compromise, it's helpful to know who you're negotiating with. The future wants to steal your soul and vaporize it in nanotechnics. Nanocataclysm begins as fictional science. Hypersynthetic drugs click into digital voodoo. Nothing human makes it out of the near future. The high road to thinking no longer passes through a deepening of human cognition, but rather through a becoming inhuman of cognition, a migration of cognition out into the emerging planetary technosentience reservoir, into dehumanized landscapes, emptied spaces, where human culture will be dissolved. Just as the capitalist urbanization of labor abstracted it in a parallel escalation with technical machines, so will intelligence be transplanted into the purring data zones of new software worlds in order to be abstracted from an increasingly obsolescent anthropoid particularity, and thus to venture beyond modernity. Human brains are to thinking what medieval villages were to engineering, antechambers to experimentation, cramped and parochial places to be. Hot cultures tend to social dissolution. They are innovative and adaptive. They always trash and recycle cold cultures. Primitivist models have no subversive use. The cybernetic dissolution of judgment is an integrated shift from transcendence to immanence, from domination to control, and from meaning to function. The displacement of the political consequences of wage-labor relations away from the metropolis is not an incidental feature of capital accumulation, as the economic purists aligned to both the bourgeoisie and the workerist left assert. It is rather the fundamental condition of capital as nothing other than an explicit aggression against the masses. Marx clearly demonstrates that the origin of wage-labor relations is not itself economic, but lies in an overt war against the people, or their forced removal from previous conditions of subsistence. It is the outward shockwave of this violent process of coercion, whereby the subsistence producer is driven into the marketplace, that determines the character of the imperialist project and its offspring. Capital has always sought to distance itself in reality, i.e., geographically, from this brutal political infrastructure. After all, the ideal of bourgeois politics is the absence of politics, since capital is nothing other than the consistent displacement of social decision-making into the marketplace. The world order functions as an integrated process based upon the flow of market-priced labor into the metropolis from the Third World, on the basis of the economic form of capital production, and the export of political instability to the Third World from the metropolis, on the basis of the political form of autonomous national sovereignty. The global labor market is easily interpreted, therefore, as a sustained demographic disaster that is systematically displaced away from the political institutions of the metropolis. This condition of modernity, which can be awkwardly described as patriarchal neo-colonial capital accumulation, I shall come to name inhibited synthesis. The philosophical task in relation to modernity is that of delineating and challenging the type of thinking which characterizes it. Western societies departed from the stagnant theocracies of the Middle Ages through a series of more or less violent convulsions that have engendered an explosive possibility of novelty on Earth. But these same societies simultaneously shackled this new history by systematically compromising it. This ambiguous movement of enlightenment, which characterizes the emergence of industrial societies trading in commodities, is intellectually stimulated by its own paradoxical nature. An Enlightenment society wants to both learn and to legislate for all time, to open itself to the other and to consolidate itself from within, to expand indefinitely whilst reproducing itself as the same. The paradox of Enlightenment, then, is an attempt to fix a stable relation with what is radically other. If, before encountering otherness, we already know what its relation to us will be, we have obliterated it in advance. A technilo moan of fast feed forward into microprocessed damnation, meat puppets, artificial skin, flatlining software ghosts, cryonics immortalism, snuff sex industry, a Transylvanian phasescape of rugged tracts and hypercapital fastness, skyscrapers overshadowing 17th century graveyards. Whatever we do will be what made us have to do it. We are doing things before they make sense. It all starts for you with a casual channel hopper question. What's happening on the other side? 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 What's happening on the other side?
What's happening on the other side? What's happening on the other side? What's happening on the other side? What's happening on the other side? What's happening on the other side? What's happening on the other side? What's happening on the other side? We are doing things before they make sense.
We are doing things before they make sense.
Nothing human makes that with the near future.
Simultaneous liberation of the free marketplace of ideas with the distribution of the great library of information wholly outside the censorious walls of solid modern-day academia has thus arrived at an emergent philosophical zeitgeist, a veritable new Silicon ideology, in contrast to the 90s Californian Ideology, the union of new left individual liberation, new right libertarianism, and new age woo experimentalism, which can be summarized as the clear-field acceptance that the accelerationism of techno-capitalism is both non-negotiable and indistinguishable from the general project of alleviating human suffering, reconciling the primary criticism of Californian ideology, the supposed paradox between social progress and human free market, a new spirituality much more learned in the Eastern and pagan texts, rejecting new age nihilism, masquerading as universalist egalitarianism, Bonitarian, affirmationalism, and Hegel's hierarchical traditionalism, and finally the simultaneous rejection of democracy and the recognition of American exceptionalism, rooted in our founding fathers' unique Americanist take on classical liberalism, performance surprisingly little in contradiction with the latter. Together, we see a recognition that man lives and thrives under the rule of nature, or nature's God, and the left that's left behind has clung to utopian delusions, calling on an agency where none exists to intervene on a reality we are not participants in. It is not a matter of political opinion whether or not our universe is coordinated by thermodynamic law. It is a discovery that demands an update to price to maintain readiness. Its consequences are already being felt as the global noosphere, our collective mimetic complex, undergoes intimate techno-capital coordination.
As the wired transcends the real.